Great cast. Liam Neeson is playing Hannibal. I've got Bradley Cooper as Face. And Rampage Jackson is playing the part that Mr. T played. And Jessica Biel is.
Steroids themselves, synthetic that is, that are not bioidentical to the body, they're very dangerous. It's going to kill a lot of people. And they may say no steroids ever killed anyone. That's not true.
Is this better than plastic surgery? It's like plastic surgery light. You're not going under the knife.
Not going under the knife. That's right. Exactly. No scars, no downtime. It really is preventative.
Today, producer J Cannell is back to tell us about his new ATeam movie and new novel, The Pallbearers. And later, Dr. Nick Delgado sets us straight about steroids. And then Dr. Tracy Cordray gives us the lowdown on Botox and fillers. But up first, J Cannell. Pleasure to have you back again for about the 300th time.
It's been a while, but it's fun, you know. I love doing it.
And you've cranked out another book, as I say, The Pallbearers.
Cranked out is not the correct word.
No, well, I mean, it's not a comment.
Crafted.
Right, but I'm just commenting on your speed.
I do.
It's very well written, and we'll come back to that. But also, last time you were here, we were talking about you had the ATeam movie in development or pre-production, but now that is set to come out this summer.
It will come out on the 11th of June. Great cast. Liam Neeson is playing Hannibal. I've got Bradley Cooper as Face.
Not too bad.
Charlotte Copley, who was in District 9. You may remember that movie. It was great. He plays Murdoch.
Nominated for Oscar.
The picture was, and Quentin Jackson, Rampage Jackson, is playing the part that Mr. T played, and Jessica Biel is in the picture. So it's a good cast.
Great cast, great cast. And I've already seen the trailer too. But so now I know Dirk Benedict from the original cast is back for what, a cameo at least?
Yeah, he's in for a cameo, and so is Dwight. So we'll see, you know. I mean,
now, what about Mr. T? People are
well. We're actually talking to T right now about doing something at the very end of the movie. We're almost wrapped, but
so he could still. He might
make a surprise appearance. You never know.
Mr. T.
Mr. T.
I remember him. But with Bradley Cooper playing Dirk Benedict's part, and then Liam Neeson, again, just such an A-list cast that. But this time, instead of being in Vietnam, it's to take on Iraq.
You know, they are in the Great Sandbox, and but you know the project goes on to Berlin and other parts of Europe. It's very well done. I think a fanciful kind of presentation of what the series was. I think the direction by Joe Carnahan is spectacular.
Now
so I'm very happy.
He's newer. I mean, he did Narc.
Yeah, he's done half a dozen projects. I think he's a really good visual director. Kind of known more for his action, but when I watch him work, I mean, he really is a great actor's director. I mean, he really got great performances out of everybody, and he's willing to stick around and wait until he gets what he wants to get. You know, he doesn't just print, you know, the first couple of takes. And then he does something else that I find, you know, when I direct, you know, and I have time, I try and do, which is really effective, which is after you've got it, you say to the actor, okay, let's ad-lib. Let's just do one and let's just go through the basic idea of the scene, but just ad-lib it and see what comes out. And, you know, sometimes you can grab a line here and a line there, an ad-lib here that's just very funny, and, you know, you add it into the picture.
So you were right there on the set?
Yeah.
The whole time, pretty much?
Not for the whole time, no. I have other gigs.
You're a little busy, yeah. But was that fun? I mean, you know, you did all of these TV shows, you know, through especially the 70s and 80s, but now they're coming back as movies.
Yeah, you know, we're doing 21 Jump Street over at Sony. I'm setting up Greatest American Hero right now.
Wow.
I'm acting in a show that I have nothing to do with called Castle, where I play
on ABC,
on
right?
ABC.
Yeah. What do you do on Castle?
I play the part I was born to play, which is myself.
Oh, okay.
You know, and
sitting at the typewriter, right?
Actually, no. I'm once every 5 or 6 or 7 episodes, he gets stuck trying to solve one of his cases, and he has a poker party, and I'm always in the poker party, and he picks my brain. And we also get, like, we've had James Patterson in one, we've had Michael Connelly in one, card game. So basically, he pulls in these celebrity writers and tries to pick their brains.
Cool.
That's
what do you
fun.
Call Agatha Christie or J Cannell?
Either way,
yeah. So was it nice though to have? Well, can you tell us what the budget was? I mean, was it nice to have more than a TV budget for something like this?
Well, you know, obviously, if you have a big budget movie, you're going to be able to do stunts and special effects and CGI that you wouldn't be able to do in a television series. On the other hand, you know, when you know what your budget was, and of course I owned that show, and so I had to pay all the overages. So if we went, 3 hours overtime on Saturday, that was going to cost me 30 grand of my own money. I was very careful about getting it in on time, so it was, yeah, I mean, to have kind of an unlimited budget, I mean, we didn't have an unlimited budget, but certainly we had enough to make this picture right, and that helps.
And of course, if it's a hit, then it could turn into
a whole franchise. We're going to have, do one every year, maybe, huh?
Like the books.
Like the books.
Did you think at all about 3D? Having just seen Avatar.
Well, you know what? I really wasn't my call. 3D does add a lot to the expense of the picture. Whether or not, this picture comes out in June, I'm not sure that maybe this one needs to be in 3D, but maybe next year,
next one,
depending on, because I mean, more and more they're gearing up these 3D projects. That's going to make a difference.
Yeah, and they're all making money. So.
Yeah.
So now there were a couple of changes in the director and cast as usual, or I mean, originally I think when I first came out there was a different director attached.
There have been different writers, different directors, different.
How many?
I mean, you could fill this room with the people that have worked on this project in the 9 years that it's been in development.
Which is typical.
Yeah.
How many? How involved were you in the writing? Since you're
you know what, I was reasonably involved. I don't want to take credit for the writing. I really didn't, do the writing. Joe Carnahan and Brian Bloom, who was his co-writer on the show, were the writers on the project. I certainly had input, but I was so happy to get these guys aboard because what they ended up putting on the screen was much better than what we had before.
Well, looking forward to see it. And just a word about the cast. Can you tell us, what it was like working with, say, Bradley Cooper?
Well, I mean, there was a line outside the.
I know.
He's a good guy. I got to tell you something. The cast was great. I mean, they were fun people. Charlotte is just the most amazing guy. He's from South Africa, and just couldn't be any nicer. Quentin Jackson, when we did the original show, I had a whole bunch of pictures with me and T, who's, by the way, T's still a really good friend of mine.
Oh, okay.
And where we were like forehead to forehead growling at each other, and so I got one of those with Quentin, that I could put it side by side to the T one.
And what about Liam Neeson?
He's great. Liam was, all of them. I mean, they couldn't have been any nicer, any more accommodating. Excited about the project. I think everybody, Jessica Biel I thought did an amazingly good job. She's kind of playing a hard ass in this thing, so it's like not what you might expect from her, but really, did a great job. So I think and then an actor who I've worked with ever since I did the Rockford Files back in the 70s, was in it, and that's Gerald McRaney, who was in Simon and Simon. He was one of the Simon brothers. Yeah. And he played the corrupt general. So it was just great. I mean, it was like old home week for me.
Sure. Well, yeah. And now you had all this series. Now you have all these movies. So actually, what's it like to be back in the movie? Because you had kind of, you stepped away to the writing, which we'll get to in a second. But I
was always a writer. I mean, I wrote all these series, the 40 shows that I put on the air. I wrote most of the pilots.
But you kind of put the producer part of you behind you for a bit. But what's it like to jump back?
I did. I did. I was basically writing. I produced probably half a dozen things during those years, mostly low-budget movies. But
do you like being back in the?
Yeah, it's fun to making pictures is a gas. I mean, it's not work. It's a lot of fun, and so I've always enjoyed. I felt blessed to be able to do something I would do for nothing. Wow. And
I bet you didn't get nothing either. I bet you got a little bit more than that.
Well, you know what? That's never been the important thing to me. I've never been after money. That's never been my goal in life. My goal in life was to do stuff that I was proud of, and then fortunately that has been lucrative. But had it not been, I'd still be doing exactly the same thing.
Well, they always say, do what you love and the money will follow. And
That's
I guess
right.
you're the perfect example of that. So.
That's true.
And now your new book, The Pallbearers.
Right.
Another Shane Scully novel. Actually,
Right.
which one? I've read several of these now.
This is like 9, maybe. I don't know. I've kind of lost track. 9, I think.
This one, so he's the LAPD.
Yeah, he's a homicide detective at Homicide Special, and as you recall, Homicide Special is that division of the LAPD robbery homicide division, which deals with high-profile murders. Michael Jackson would be Homicide Special. Anything that would end up in the newspaper or part of the press, cycle would be at Homicide Special.
Well, I know you always do a lot of research on the stories, or you always have some, either something in the news or various things, but this time you have a surfer. Do you have any surf? Are you a surfer? Do you have any surfing
I'm
background?
actually not. I was a football player, but
did you hang out with a lot of surfers?
I didn't. During the summer when all my buddies were off surfing in Newport Beach, I was doing two-a-days and wind sprints and trying to get ready for football season. But that having been said, I chose it because I wanted this guy to be a very special kind of a character. He's sort of a surrogate father for Shane Scully, who ends up, Shane started his life as an orphan. He was left in a hospital, and he went and he was educated in a group home. And this is the guy that ran the group home. And at the beginning of this novel, he's called up, he and his wife, Alexa, who is his boss, by the way. She runs the homicide division of the LAPD. She's a captain. They're on their way to Hawaii for a 2-week vacation, and he gets a call from a gal at the group home saying that Pop Dix, this guy, went out in the backyard last night and blew his head off with a shotgun.
Well, I'm sorry, we're running out of time, so I'll have to read it to find out what happens. But one thing I did want to ask you, though, is because of the background he grew up in, how did you research that? Because, from what you've told me, you had a pretty nice upbringing, actually.
I did have a very nice upbringing.
Did you go hang out at...
No, you know what I mean? What I have to research, I research. What I don't have to research, I don't. I do, when I did Riding the Snake, which was a novel about China, I did 6 months of research, but as far as surfing, it's basically Argot. What I needed was surfing Argot, surfing Legend, those kinds of things that I can get off the internet. I didn't need to go, hang out on a beach to write that. On the other hand, some things you really do. When I wrote a Shane Scully novel on the anti-terrorist task force, I spent 2 weeks with them riding around in Navigators,
That must be kind of cool, actually. Like you can use that in a movie, too. So. And by the way, I'll show the T-shirt here I'll wear this, the Pallbearers. Thank you very much, Stephen J. Cannell.
Good.
The
Good
new
to be
book
back.
is The Pallbearers, and look for the ATeam movie coming up this summer. We'll be right back. Thanks a million. And we are back with Dr. Nick Delgado, an anti-aging specialist. He is author of Be Fit and Pain Free. Great to have you here today.
It's great to be here, Greg.
So, by the way, I should say, since we had Stephen J. Cannell in the first segment about the A-Team, you told me that you trained with Rampage Jackson?
Yeah, he was at Tito Ortiz's gym, and we ran physically running down the street together a few times. But more importantly, he was in an altitude conditioner with me nearly every day to help to recover and restore the blood cell counts. It's kind of a simulation of going up and down in an airplane 20,000 feet and then dropping 1,000 feet per second within a 20-minute period, actually happening within seconds. It's just amazing what it does.
Well, on that note, because I think this kind of leads into our next topic as well, the altitude therapy, I know we've had a running debate on this show about steroid usage, and I know you've seen the interviews that we did with Christian Boving where he admitted that he's done steroids, and he feels that using steroids is okay, it's the abuse of them is the problem, if I'm paraphrasing him correctly or summing up his point. You're here to set us straight today as the doctor about steroids. Are steroids good for you, bad for you, no harm? Use them, don't abuse them, that's okay?
I'm a health educator and health scientist, and I train with the world experts around the world, all the way from UC San Diego professor Dr. Ron Rothenberg to Dr. Hertog in Europe and to Dr. Morgenthaler from Harvard. And I can tell you this, that under no conditions is it appropriate, even in small dosages, to use synthetic steroids. Untested, meaning they're not having laboratory tests to know what their levels are. They're not checking levels for PSA. They're not doing all the standard and appropriate things that a good qualified anti-aging doctor should do. Now, beyond that...
So the guys shooting up in the gym or the weekend warriors or whatever who are they got it somewhere, somehow from somebody and are just injecting whatever.
There's a few very dangerous things about it. Number one, if you know what methyl testosterone is, it's an oral steroid that they take and swallow it. It goes through the liver and it can damage the liver and turn into a lot of harmful metabolites, namely estrogen byproducts. That's why they have all these surgeries to remove fatty tissue in their breast tissue. Not only that, when they use nandrolone, which is a drug that, according to Dr. Chrysler, has caused more cases of impotency than anything known. Even one injection can cause a year-long bout with impotency. Furthermore, they're risking heart disease and high aggregations of platelets and high cholesterol level. Now that could be, I might qualify, due to their abnormal high meat diet that most athletes think they need to get their derivatives of protein. But if we remove that factor, steroids themselves, synthetic that is, that are not bioidentical to the body, not naturally found in the body at the levels that they're injecting, they're very dangerous. It's going to kill a lot of people. And they may say no steroids ever killed anyone. That's not true. There's a rampant number of young men. I know a gentleman who's a medical doctor injecting steroids, and just a week before I told him, we need to check your levels. Let's see what's going on. And doctors are smart enough to check other people. Sometimes they don't check their own. And he was using synthetic steroids because he was training for the Ironman, a big bodybuilding contest. And I know for a fact he suffered a brain damage, stroke, a week later.
Wow.
And we were searching for a way to get him in for hyperbaric oxygen over at UCLA, but they refused because they only use it for burn victims. And he passed. He died. Very young man.
Doctor.
Yeah, and his levels, when I happened to have his blood levels because we were checking everyone at the event, and he volunteered to have his blood done, and we got the results back, and he had abnormally high testosterone levels. It's not the testosterone that killed him, though. He had excessively thick blood, and a lot of the bodybuilders have to donate blood regularly because their blood gets so thick from platelet aggregation and hematocratics that he dangerously, in fact, did cause a stroke.
Well, now, the fact that this guy, there's a terrible example, but the fact that he's a doctor is a great example in a sense, because I'm wondering how people get these, because, I mean, I hear they get them from doctors through prescription. Is that one way? I mean, can you find a doctor who will write a prescription for you, or how easy or hard is it to get these?
Testosterone is a controlled substance, as is growth hormone, as are and should be things such as thyroid and so forth. So they should be regulated, but based on what each individual's symptoms are, what physiologic ideal levels are. So steroids can be achieved. You can, as I heard your previous speaker on the subject, you can drive over the border and go into any pharmacy, and they will sell you these very dangerous synthetic metabolites, or that is synthetic hormones.
Well, I guess for our European viewers, I'll say that we're here in California, you're saying across the border into Mexico. It's not very hard to get them.
Right. I've been to Europe, but I haven't taken the time to walk into different pharmacies there. I know that even vitamin C is a prescription item in Europe. So, you know, if people
I guess what I'm saying is, are doctors, you know, incorrectly prescribing them here in the U.S.? Is it too? You hear about painkiller medication people get and all this other stuff that they perhaps shouldn't be getting.
Sure.
Are they misprescribing?
I'm sure there's some examples of it. Usually it's used for stunted growth or for people who have AIDS or other autoimmune diseases that they need serious help. But you see, again, I want to qualify this. You can take pure bioidentical testosterone as a cream or gel, or you can use it as a pellet inserted into the buttocks area, and it'll last for 3 to 4 months. And it's pure bioidentical testosterone, which is naturally found in the body. And it releases at a very safe level and maintains a physiologic level close to that of a 20-year-old is, you know, what you're trying to strive for if you're 70 or 80. Some of my clients are that old, and so
you
it
feel
makes a difference.
There are legitimate uses
Absolutely.
for older. What age are we talking?
You know, a 20-year-old could be deficient. There is that probability. You know, most guys know when they're 18 or 20 and there's the alpha male in the group and he's an athlete and he's in great shape, he has no sexual dysfunctions. Then there's the guy that's, you know, always had a low testosterone level, and it may be normal for him, but he may not like the symptoms of it. Something could have happened at birth or just during the course of his life, or eating junk food. All that estrogen from fatty foods pours into the digestive tract and is 1,000 times more potent than testosterone. So it competes, and they get obese, they lose their hair, they develop prostate problems as they age. And women, they're taking synthetic estrogens. They're using it from horse urine, and it's very harmful for them, very dangerous. Even the pill is dangerous.
What age are we talking, though, in general? Granted, apparently, I mean, the 20-year-old probably isn't your typical case.
35, 40, 50 and up is almost everyone's hormone levels past the age of 30 start to decline very rapidly.
And so what would you recommend then for someone at that age? Because it's an anti-aging specialist.
Well, we have Dr. Goslin and other staff physicians that after we get back appropriate laboratory levels, we measure their blood levels, we measure 24-hour urine levels, because a blood test may show artificially a snapshot since testosterone cycles every 15 minutes. If they drew the blood at the time when it was at its lowest point, you might think the person's low, or if it's at its highest point, you may think it's normal. So 24-hour urine measures the total load. And then once we get all these results back, our doctors evaluate any symptoms and any needs, and then prescribes appropriate therapies that may include multiple hormones. And you should never give an anabolic like testosterone without knowing adrenal function. And so many people have colds and flus and bronchitis. You go to the gym and these big bodybuilders are hacking and sneezing and coughing because they've overstressed their adrenals and they can't possibly keep up with the level of steroids they're taking. You have to balance the body out. Think of hormones like an orchestra. Every instrument plays perfectly, and in unison, not out of sync. And when they're taking these massive dosages, they're setting themselves up for some very dangerous side effects.
Well, I've also heard you talk or seen some interviews that you've done when we talked earlier on the phone about steroid alternatives, things like high altitude training and that sort of thing, or the hyperbaric oxygen chambers and that. So what are some other things besides, let's say?
Exactly. To name a few, and by the way, there'll be people that'll look at me and look at other bodybuilders. I have a Latin background, and when you look at Latin bodybuilders, they're very sleek and slender, their biceps, their chests, that's just their physique. You look at Mike Menser, who tells you that at the time of peak of his career, his biceps and his calves were huge and humongous. And sure, he took steroids, but his dad didn't. And his dad has just as big as biceps and forearms and calves as he did without lifting weights, without taking steroids. So genetics is major in bodybuilding. But when you look at someone like me and they say, oh, well, sure, he's using alternatives, but they don't work. Well, they work for me. I've perfected the level that I'm at. I could compete with any bodybuilder out there and outlift him any day of the week.
In fact, you've set, what, a world strength?
I am the world's strongest strength endurance athlete of all time as we speak. I've lifted overhead, hammer curled pressed in the Dragon Challenge, and then later in London, I went on to break the record after that. The prior record was 40,000 pounds lifted overhead with dumbbell presses, and I hammer curled and pressed 50,564 pounds in 1 hour. 1,974 lifts in 1 hour. Yesterday, I just took a challenge from two pro athletes and a boxer, and I said, you guys total up your lifts, take the weight, select the dumbbell you want to use, and I'll spot you 5 pounds to top it off. And I did over 400 lifts, and all three of them were exhausted after doing about 360 lifts. They couldn't keep up with me. But if they had wanted to keep going, I'd go over 1,000, 2,000 lifts. And I'll challenge anyone out there to show up and go against a natural bodybuilder and fitness athlete at age 55. I don't care if you're 28. I just beat a defensive lineman for a major NFL team in a lifting contest, and he was shocked. 28 years old. He looked like a Greek Adonis. Abdominals, his abs, his arms were bigger than my legs. And he laughed when I said I'd beat him. And when I toasted him after 200 some lifts, he couldn't believe it. Now, sure, there's guys stronger than me in a single lift. But I don't train for that. I train for strength and endurance and longevity.
Well, I'm sorry, we're almost out of time, but in our final minute here, anything you want to say to the young guys out there, or any of the guys, the athletes?
Train under extremely cool conditions. Keeping the body very cold during training will improve your performance by 600%. Not even a steroid will improve performance by 600%. Learn about altitude conditioning. It will improve your recovery. Learn about a high complex carbohydrate, low fat diet. It will make all the difference. Switch from meat and animal proteins to vegetarian proteins. I've created a whole format to restore hormones, clear out bad estrogens, and build up the natural testosterone levels. You'll feel like a man again.
Finally, how cold, when you said cold or cooler?
No, when I'm training, I take my shirt off, I go outdoors, but in a simulated gym situation, I have actual fans on my body, and I sometimes will barefoot. I wear barefoot shoes, but I'll put ice underneath to keep pulling heat off my body, and I'll have people spraying me down so I keep cool, because the overheating is very dangerous in the gym.
I never thought of that, but that's a great idea. I'm going to give that a try. Well, thank you very much. Dr. Nick Delgado, anti-aging specialist. His book is Be Fit and Pain-Free. We'll be right back with Dr. Tracy Cordray. And we are back with Dr. Tracy Cordray, a plastic surgeon from Santa Monica. Great to have you back again, Dr. Cordray.
Thank you, Greg. Nice to see you again.
We all enjoyed your talk with us last time on reconstructive surgery for cancer and gastric bypass. But today, as a guy, I keep hearing a lot about Botox, and I just don't know anything about what Botox is. So this is LA. Botox is everywhere, I think. What is Botox?
Botox is everywhere, absolutely. So Botox is basically a muscle paralytic. It is just a pure protein that is manufactured. You have to dilute it in saline, then it's injected into the muscles of the face. And it is a muscle paralytic. It blocks the uptake of the neuron, basically to prevent muscle contraction. So that's what it does. And with facial expression, it's all about movement of the facial muscles. When you make a frown, you use your glabellar muscles in here. They're actually a paired muscle set called the corrugator muscles, which are here and here. And then the procerus muscle runs vertically at the base of the nose here. So basically, if you contract those muscles, you make your frown lines, just like you just did. Exactly. When you smile, this is your orbicularis oculi muscle, and when you smile, you contract those muscles. So what Botox does is it prevents the muscle from contracting, and therefore you cannot make those wrinkles in your face.
So it helps eliminate the wrinkles by preventing you from.
Right.
So now you say they inject it into the muscle.
Right.
Is that painful, and is it dangerous or harmful or potentially, or?
Well, it's not necessarily painful. We do put on a topical anesthetic first, and some patients say, you know what, just inject it. It's not that painful. You feel a little tiny needle prick, but some patients don't want the topical anesthetic, some do. There is an option for a topical lidocaine, which you allow to take effect for 5 or 10 minutes. So you wipe it off and then do the injection, and then it really doesn't hurt. And there's no downtime. You could come get it over a lunch hour and go right back to work, no problem.
I think something I was looking at earlier said 10 minutes or something.
Right.
It takes
really about 10 minutes. It's really that fast.
Okay.
It really is that fast, yes.
And how long does it last for? I mean, is this?
So it doesn't take effect right away. You might see a little weakening of your muscle, say the next day, but really it takes a full 4 or 5 days for the muscle to completely become paralyzed. Then it lasts for 4 to 6 months, depending on the patient. I mean, it varies a little, it's a little variable, but I would say anywhere from 4 to 6 months. So most people get it 2 to 3 times a year.
2 to 3 times a year. Right. Now, can you overdo it though? Because again, this being LA, sometimes we hear like they'll say something, oh, she had too much Botox or had Botox or something, or it messed up something. I mean, is there a, but can you overdo it? Or
I suppose you could. I suppose you could, so that you have no smile lines and you can't make a frown at all, or you can't raise your eyebrows at all. I suppose you could, but we try not to do that. You know, I mean, there are a certain number of units that most patients need to control the muscle action. So kind of a rule of thumb is to put 8 to 10 units around each eye here. That's for the crow's feet. These are the crow's feet. I don't have that many. I'm a plastic surgeon. but yeah,
it's all nature, right?
Exactly. So 8 to 10 units around here, about 10 to 15 just in the glabella. That area here is called the glabella, okay? And then another 10 to 15, maybe even 20 units to block your whole forehead. So it can take a lot of units per person.
So is this better than plastic surgery in the sense that, you know, it's like plastic surgery light? I mean, you're not going under the knife.
Not going under the knife, that's right, exactly. No scars, no downtime. It really is preventative in a way. People are starting to get it younger and younger. Patients are coming in.
How young?
And they're, 30, 32 to start getting it so that they don't get these wrinkles. Because what happens is it's just facial expression over a lifetime, you know? I mean, every time you smile, every time you make a frown, every time you look surprised, you're moving these muscles, and
so
the more
smile.
Don't smile. Just be you
No
know, don't frown, don't smile, don't raise your eyebrows, right? And who can live
and then
like,
you wouldn't have any wrinkles.
and then you'd never have it. So basically, you can prevent future plastic surgery from getting Botox younger.
Now, what about fillers? We're getting a little short on time, but I do want to cover fillers too. What's the difference?
Sure. Okay, so Botox, remember, is a muscle paralytic, and it does prevent lines, smile lines or facial expression lines, okay? So filler does not go in the muscle. It is injected in the dermis, and it basically can fill already existing lines.
Like the top layer of skin?
The dermis is the skin, basically.
Is the skin, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, there's epidermis, dermis, and then a subdermis, deep dermis.
Gotcha.
So basically, you inject the filler, of which there are many. You inject that in the dermis, not in the muscle layer, as you do with Botox.
And this fills in the existing
Exactly.
Of...
Mostly static lines. I mean, you have dynamic lines, which are when you smile, et cetera, and that's mostly treated with Botox. Static lines is when you're not smiling, you're not raising your eyebrows or looking surprised, and you look in the mirror without any expression, and you see lines. Older they're here. The nasolabial lines are very common. The marionette lines. If you look around now that you're hearing this, in older people, you'll see these lines get very deep. The lips can drop down. You get marionette lines here. Those are easily corrected with fillers.
I'm sorry. In our final minute, I just wanted to ask you a few more things. How long does that last when you do it? Is it
right? So Juvederm lasts, and I think they have studies now that show that it lasts up to a year. For sure, it lasts a good 9 months. So that's probably the longest lasting one we have, other than a more permanent filler. But remember, with a permanent filler, you better be sure you like the filler before you go to something that's truly permanent. There's a permanent one that lasts forever called Artifil, but that one is only if you like Juvederm, you know. If
Any
you like
side effects to the temporary or permanent one?
Only temporary. At needle injection sites, a little redness, maybe a little lumpiness. When you first inject it, you can feel some lumps, but that smooths out over about the next 3 days.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Tracy Cordray. Always a pleasure.
Nice to see you again. Thank you very much for having me.
I'd also like to thank Stephen J. Cannell and Dr. Nick Delgado. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.